A plane travels from point A on a bearing 150 degrees to point B, 10 kilometers from A. How far east of A is B? Okay, so we know that anytime we're talking about bearing, we're referring to the specific condition where we're measuring the angle from the north line and we're measuring it in a clockwise direction. Now in this case, they actually gave you a visual aid so that you actually see what the situation is, so that even if for some reason you didn't understand what bearing is and what bearing means, then you have the diagram as a guide. However, in your paper 2, very often you'll get a bearings question where they just give you the paragraph without the diagram. So you now have to visualize the scenario using the definition of what bearing is, and 9 times out of 10, in fact 99 times out of 100, I would say in a case like that, you draw a diagram and specify what it is from a visual perspective, and then you're in a position now to make your calculation. Sometimes in the question they will even ask you specifically to draw a diagram. They'll probably give you 2 or 3 marks for the diagram and then do your calculations. But in this case, we actually have the diagram given to us, so we could start the work. The question asks, how far east of A is B? So B is 10 kilometers from A on a bearing of 150 degrees. Using this information, we want to find how far east of A B is. So in other words, east of A, if this is your north line, then south would be like this. South would be going down, east would be going to your right, and west would be going to your left. So how far east of A is B? We're referring to this situation here. Right? That's what we're talking about. So in other words, this is the distance we're trying to find. Now, if we're talking about the distance of B east of A, then this angle here must be a right angle, because this line is your north line. So if this is your north line and this, let me call it the east line in this case, then this angle here must be a right angle. And once we have that as a right angle, everything now comes into focus, because that angle being a right angle gives us now a right angle triangle between A, B, and let us label a point here, let me call it C. Alright? So A, B, and C is now a right angle triangle, which is, boom, we could work now. So given the fact that this bearing is 150 degrees, it means then that this angle here would be our good friend 30 degrees. And if this is 30 and this is 10 kilometers, which means then that 10 is your hypotenuse, then the distance here, right? So in other words, we now have to decide which one of your 3 trigonometric ratios we're going to use. If this is the hypotenuse and this is the angle that we have under consideration, then this here would be a opposite side, so that opposite over hypotenuse would be a cosine. So in other words, we could say then that cosine 30, cosine of 30 would be equal to, let me say, x over 10. Alright? Which means then that therefore x would be equal to, in fact no, let me keep everything on the same side. You cross multiply, so you have now that 10 cosine 30 will be equal to x. So therefore x will be equal to 10 multiplied by cosine 30, which corresponds to answer A, 10 cosine 30.